I tell you what I would know, though, and that is it's very important to be able to write correctly. Do you think that you know how to write well? Well, you're probably the sort of person who believes that once your letter goes off, that the message that you originally put into those words is going to be delivered correctly to the person intended. It ain't necessarily so. Please welcome expert on language and also writing, Alan Pease. Alan, write language, the new secrets of writing letters that really work. What's the key to writing a good letter?
Well, there's two things. First of all, we know that if you write any letter, particularly if it's a work-related letter that begins with "Dear Sir" or ends up with "Yours faithfully," "Yours sincerely," that most people, 70% of the time, don't read the middle bit. So what we do is we look at the letterhead and we look for the "Dear Bert," and we think, who's this from? Go to the signature, then you make a decision whether you're going to read it or not. And most of the time we find people don't read it. So the key is to be able to talk in letters like you talk, like we are now. And the funny thing is, in Australian people, we talk like this now, yet I'm likely to go away if I'm an average person and write "Dear Bert." Yet how would you feel if face-to-face I was to meet you and say, "Dear Bert"? What would you think?
Personally, I'd like it. So you think we should drop that? Because I thought that was tradition.
Well, it is, yeah. You imagine it, as I left, I said, "Bert, I'll always remain yours faithfully."
Yes.
What would you say? I mean,
I've heard that before from people, and it's never true, you know. Never true.
Well, there's a reason why we talk like that. If you go back to England 200 years ago, people would meet in the street and they would say, "My dear Bert, further to our conversation of the 10th inst, I have here for your perusal." And because we don't talk like that. And as they leave, they'd say, "Bert, I'll always remain yours sincerely, your humble servant." And of course, what's happened is language has changed for people in Australia, but people still go home and write "Dear" somebody or other, and they're not effective letters.
So what should we do?
Well, if we met face to face like this.
I mean, if you write to someone and you want to really get the message, what do you do? Like, "Listen here, rough nut," and get straight into it,
Yeah,
do you?
that'll work. That would work.
Would it really?
Well, let's say that you don't know the person.
Yes.
If you rang them on the phone, what would you say?
"Oh, hello, Alan, how are you?"
You say, "Hello, how are you?" You say, "Good morning."
I'm a great ad-libber.
You say, "Good afternoon." You say, "Good evening." And the key with writing letters is if you get the first lines right, the first two lines, such as, "Good morning, Bert." Now, first of all, somebody says, "This is a bit different." So therefore, they'll read the next line. Now, if they get to the next line, we found if they read that line, they'll read the entire paragraph. So once you've got the first part, which is the same as if you met them face to face. Now, if you don't want to use "good morning" or "good afternoon," you can start off with a sentence. For example, "Bert, you may be amazed to hear this, ... and that replaces "Dear Bert." If you put "Dear Bert," you mean you're in deep trouble. I mean, I got a letter the other day about a parking fine, which I'd apparently neglected, and they said, "Dear Mr. Pease, we're going to put you in jail, yours faithfully." And they weren't faithful or dear about the whole situation. So it's right the way you actually talk, and people will begin to read what's in the letter.
Yeah, but don't you think sometimes, though, that people can ingratiate themselves a little too much? And I got one this morning, and this is true, which didn't open up "Dear Bert." It was, "Bert, happy Monday morning." And I thought, well, that's really going a little over the top. I mean, Fitzroy's been beaten over the weekend. A horse of mine has broken down. Paddy's not particularly pleased with me at the moment. He's saying, you know, what a lovely Monday morning it is.
Did you know the guy who wrote the letter?
Oh, yes, very well. My brother.
Well, again, you've got to be careful that you don't go too personal in a letter. I mean, the most formal you can go, we found, is "good morning" or "good afternoon," and people will read the next letter, the next line. Now, once you get to the next line, you've got to have something that's really punchy. And we've tested a few things in this country with Aussies, and we found that "I blew it" gets people to read the entire paragraph. So I'd start off with, "Good morning, Bert. I blew it." Now, you reckon you're going to read the next paragraph to find out what I blew?
Of course, of course.
Now, once you get past the next paragraph, you've got to have some little catchy phrases. And we've tested these with Australians. Now, it doesn't work so well in England because, I mean, the English started all this "Dear Sir" stuff. And the phrases that'll get people to read the entire paragraph include, "Let me explain that." They include, "Imagine this." Now, we found that's a real ripper with Aussies. Like, remember we were back in school? The teacher said, "Right, imagine this." What did you do?
I used to just look up and wonder what he's going to say next.
But you start to think about whatever it was he's painting, you start to imagine.
It was different for us. He said we spoke in Latin.
That was a while back. 40 years in television.
So what about the wind-off? I guess the important thing is to be succinct too, isn't it, Alan?
Well, get straight to the point.
Yep.
And use short sentences. And we found when testing, say, love letters, for example, and we put together some test love letters, which blow women's socks off. Yeah.
Yes,
they work, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you put short sentences in there, it's a bit like if you're going to ask a woman to go on a date, like, you've got to think back a bit here now. And if
How do you know that, Alan?
if you say to a woman, for example, Dear Susan, further our conversation of the 10th inst, I have here for your perusal an engagement ring, and should you be interested, contact the undersigned. I mean, you'd have no chance. So what you do is you say, Sue, I love you. Now, if you put that in a letter in short sentences, we found in love letters, as in any letter that appeals to the emotions, if you've got short sentences, people keep on reading it. And you put in, imagine this, let me explain that, and they keep reading right through to the bottom part where you sign off.
Just finally, Alan, how much do you believe in today's society, especially in Western society, how much depends upon a written letter? Because surely so much business is done now, and also personal contact is made person to person.
Well, most Australians don't write letters, and the reason we don't is because we're talking like we are now, and then most people go away and they sit down and they write, Dear Bert, and then they get like a mental constipation, like there's nothing happening, and they're sitting because they're trying to think back to how it sounded at school rather than saying what they want to say. And if you can put words in writing that get people motivated, you can get dates, you can get jobs, you can get the next Edge AV competition, whatever, you can get absolutely anything, and we've proved that with letters, particularly love letters. I mean, the average Aussie, when getting to meet women, is a hopeless case. And some of the love letters that we did, there's one love letter. This guy had been watching this woman sit outside his window for 2 years on the grass, and he never had the courage to go out and say, well, how about a cup of coffee? So we wrote a love letter that said, I've been watching you for 2 years, I'm enraptured by you. And she gave him a date to see what a guy would look like. He could write a letter that sounded like that.
Well, see, an old North Fitzroy boy like myself, I just go out and mow the lawn. You've got to meet it that way, haven't you? Good luck with the book, Alan. Lovely seeing you again. Alan Pease. And he's the author of Right Language.